I got fired for backing up data. That's right. Not for stealing, not for sabotage, but for being too careful. They thought I'd bow my head and leave like a kicked dog, but they forgot I built that entire system. And I didn't leave alone. I left them a gift called the 2016 Snapshot. Good luck with those $80 million contracts. My name is Elena Carver. And for 8 years, I was the invisible backbone of Nextrace Systems. You know those people who make everything run smoothly but never get invited to the executive lunches? That was me. 34 years old, senior DevOps engineer, and stupidly loyal to a company that saw me as nothing more than a line item on a spreadsheet. Nextrace wasn't always a soulless machine. When I joined in 2016, it was a scrappy Austin startup with big dreams of revolutionizing data analytics for defense contractors and private logistics. Back then, we'd pull all-nighters fueled by cold pizza and the genuine belief we were building something meaningful. I wasn't just writing code, I was crafting the very infrastructure that would eventually handle billions of data points for some of the most sensitive operations in the country. I became known as the paranoid one. And I wore that badge with pride. While others rushed to deploy, I built redundancies. While they celebrated shipped features, I created backup protocols nobody asked for. Every Sunday night, without fail, I'd run comprehensive system backups. Not because anyone told me to, the official policy only required monthly archives, but because I'd seen too many startups crater from a single corrupted database or ransomware attack. "Why do you waste your weekends on this?" my colleague Marcus once asked, finding me in the office at 11 p.m. on a Sunday, monitoring another backup cycle. Because when shit hits the fan, and it always does, everyone suddenly becomes religious about backups. I'd replied. The irony wasn't lost on me later. By 2024, Nextrace had morphed into something unrecognizable. The ping-pong table gathered dust. The open-door policy became a maze of scheduled meetings. And worst of all, the old guard, people who built this place with their bare hands, were being systematically replaced by what I call the LinkedIn lions. Executives with perfect smiles and impressive resumes who spoke in acronyms and viewed engineering as a necessary evil rather than the company's heartbeat. The transformation accelerated when Rick Dallard joined as our new COO, Harvard MBA, former McKinsey consultant, and a man who probably couldn't write a line of code if his stock options depended on it. He swept in with promises of operational excellence and strategic realignment. Corporate speak for, "I'm going to gut this place and dress up the corpse for Wall Street." I watched him work his magic. First came the efficiency audits, then the redundancy eliminations. And no, the irony of that term wasn't lost on me either. Good people, brilliant engineers who'd been here since the early days, started disappearing. Not fired, officially, just transitioned or pursuing other opportunities, or my personal favorite, exploring new horizons. But I was safe, or so I thought. After all, I literally held the keys to the kingdom. I knew every system, every integration, every dirty little secret buried in our legacy code. Who else would maintain the Byzantine authentication system I'd built? Who else understood the intricate dance between our various microservices? "Elena, you're irreplaceable," my direct manager, Tom, assured me during one of our one-on-ones. "Rick might be cleaning house, but he knows talent when he sees it." I believed him. God help me, I actually believed him. The Friday before everything went to hell, I'd just finished another backup cycle. Our data had grown exponentially. What used to take 2 hours now stretched to 6. I was tired, ready to go home, when I noticed something odd in the system logs. Someone had been poking around the historical backup directories, not accessing them, just browsing, like a burglar casing a house. I flagged it to Tom. He brushed it off. Probably just the new security audit. Rick's bringing in some consultants to evaluate our infrastructure. That should have been my first real warning. In 8 years, no one had ever questioned my backup protocols. Now suddenly, consultants were sniffing around my work. I left that Friday with an uneasy feeling in my gut. The same instinct that made me paranoid about backups was screaming that something was wrong. But I ignored it. After all, I was irreplaceable. Monday would prove exactly how replaceable I really was. Monday morning started like any other. Coffee, code review, checking weekend alerts. Then at 10:47 a.m., a Slack message popped up from HR. Elena, please join us in conference room C at 11 a.m. Thanks. No context, no agenda. Just that chirpy exclamation point that felt like a knife wrapped in a bow. I walked into conference room C to find Rick Dallard sitting at the head of the table, flanked by Melissa from HR and someone I didn't recognize, probably legal. No Tom, no friendly faces, just three sharks circling their prey. Elena, please sit, Rick said, gesturing to the chair across from him. The power play was obvious, him at the head, me isolated on the other side. What's this about? I asked, though my stomach already knew. Melissa slid a folder across the table. We need to discuss some concerning discoveries regarding your system access and data management practices. I opened the folder, screenshots of my backup logs, my personal documentation, even timestamps of my weekend work. I don't understand, I said, though I was beginning to. These are my standard backup protocols. I've been doing this for years. Rick leaned forward, his expression a masterclass in fake concern. Elena, you've been maintaining unauthorized copies of company data. That's a serious violation of our information security policy. Unauthorized? Tom knew about this. Hell, the previous CTO encouraged it. We've avoided 3 potential disasters because of these backups. Do you have written authorization? Legal guy finally spoke, his voice flat and disinterested. It was verbal, but... So that's a no. Rick interrupted. You've been creating unencrypted, untracked copies of sensitive client data, including defense contracts. Do you understand the liability this creates? The room spun. They were twisting 8 years of dedication into some kind of corporate espionage. They're not unencrypted, I protested. Every backup follows AES 256 standards, and they're all on company servers, not personal devices. On deprecated servers, Melissa added, reading from her notes. Servers that were supposed to be decommissioned 6 months ago, but somehow remained active under your access credentials. That's when I realized this wasn't a discussion. It was an execution. They'd done their homework, twisted every fact, painted every precaution as a violation. You're firing me for doing my job too well? I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. Rick's mask slipped for just a second, and I saw the real him, cold, calculating, utterly without conscience. We're offering you a choice, Elena. You can resign quietly, sign this NDA, and receive 2 weeks severance. Or we can terminate you for cause, which means no severance, no references, and potential legal action for data theft. Data theft? I built this fucking system. Language, Melissa chided, as if profanity was the real crime here. I looked at the NDA, standard corporate cover-your-ass boilerplate, but with some interesting additions. I couldn't discuss any company systems, processes, or historical data structures. That last bit set off every alarm in my head. I need time to review this with a lawyer, I said. Unfortunately, this offer expires when you leave this room. Rick replied. The board is very concerned about this security breach. We need immediate resolution. Security breach. They were calling 8 years of protecting their asses a security breach. And if I refuse both options? Legal guy cleared his throat. Then we'll have no choice but to pursue all available remedies, including criminal charges for unauthorized access to computer systems. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. They'd criminalize me, paint me as some rogue employee who'd stolen data. Who'd hire a DevOps engineer with that kind of baggage? I won't sign the NDA, I said finally, and I won't resign. Rick shrugged. Then you're terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Your access has already been revoked. Already revoked? This meeting is just theater? Please surrender your badge and any company property, Melissa said, ignoring my question. I pulled my badge from my pocket and tossed it on the table. 8 years reduced to a piece of plastic. Security was already waiting outside. 2 guards I'd said good morning to for years now wouldn't meet my eyes. The walk to my desk felt like a perp walk. Colleagues averted their gazes. Some probably already knew. Others would learn through the rumor mill that Elena Carver was escorted out for security violations. They gave me 5 minutes to pack under supervision. No time for goodbyes, no chance to export personal files. Just grab your coffee mug and get out. Your personal items will be mailed to you after IT reviews your workstation, one guard informed me. I almost laughed. IT reviewing my workstation. I was it. As the elevator descended, I pulled out my phone to find my corporate email already bouncing. 8 years of contacts, conversations, proof of my contributions, gone. They digitally erased me before I'd even stood up from that conference table. The Austin sun felt surreal on my face as I stood in the parking garage, cardboard box in hand like some cliché from a movie. My car, the same car I'd driven to countless late nights and weekend emergencies, felt foreign. I sat there for 20 minutes, engine off, trying to process what had just happened. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Tom. "I'm so sorry. I fought for you. They wouldn't listen. Please don't reply to this." So he knew. They'd cut him out of the execution but made sure he understood the consequences of defending me. That's when the anger started. Not hot rage, but something colder, more focused. They'd made one mistake in their perfect little coup. They'd forgotten that paranoid people always have contingency plans. The first week was a blur of humiliation and practical panic. My savings would last 3 months, maybe 4 if I cut everything to the bone. But it wasn't the money that kept me awake at night. It was the silence. 8 years of being available 24/7, and suddenly my phone was a dead brick. Former colleagues who'd laughed at my jokes and begged for my help with production issues had vanished like I'd contracted some corporate plague. Only Marcus reached out, a single encrypted message. "Can't talk. They're watching. You were right about the backups." Then nothing. I spent hours on job sites, crafting applications that went nowhere. Every rejection felt personal. Word travels fast in Austin's tech scene. And apparently, the word was that Elena Carver was radioactive. One recruiter actually told me off the record. Nobody wants to touch someone terminated for security violations, especially from a defense contractor. By week 2, depression had morphed into something more useful. Curiosity. Why me? Why now? The backup excuse was bullshit, but there had to be a reason. You don't execute your most senior DevOps engineer 3 months before an IPO, unless she knows something you need buried. I started digging, not into Nexttrace. My lawyer had made it crystal clear that any unauthorized access would land me in federal prison. But Rick Dallard, he was fair game. What I found made my termination make perfect sense. 2019, Rick served as COO of Data Vault Solutions. Company went public with glowing metrics. 6 months later, accounting irregularities surfaced. The infrastructure had been manipulated to show 10x user engagement. Rick resigned for personal reasons just before the SEC investigation. 2021, CTO at Meridian Analytics. Another IPO preparation, another sudden departure. This time, whistleblowers reported that system logs had been systematically altered to hide performance issues. No charges filed. Rick landed softly with a golden parachute. The pattern was clear. Rick Dallard was a corporate cleanup artist, brought in to polish turds for Wall Street, and the fastest way to polish a tech company? Control the narrative by controlling the data. But at Nexttrace, there was a problem. Me. I'd built too many safeguards, created too many redundancies. Every backup I'd made was a potential smoking gun that could expose whatever fiction they were crafting for investors. The realization hit me in the shower, of all places. They weren't just firing me, they were erasing history. Those deprecated servers they'd mentioned, they contained 8 years of unedited truth. Every crash, every patch, every dirty workaround we'd implemented to meet impossible deadlines. I drove past the Nexttrace building that night. Don't ask me why, Maybe I was torturing myself. Maybe I was saying goodbye. The parking lot was full, lights blazing on the IT floor. They were working overtime, probably purging everything I'd touched. That's when I saw Tom's car. And through the lit windows, I could see figures moving frantically. They weren't just removing my access, they were rebuilding the entire authentication system. My system. The next morning, curiosity became investigation. I still had friends in the industry. People who'd left Nexttrace before the purge. Sarah from QA, Mike from infrastructure, Jennifer who'd jumped to Apple last year. Coffee meetings that weren't about job hunting but intelligence gathering. They brought in a whole new team. Sarah told me over lattes. External consultants. Nobody recognizes half the people on the DevOps floor anymore. Mike was more specific. They're rewriting history. Elena. Every performance metric. Every system benchmark. Making it look like the platform was always more efficient than it was. Classic pre-IPO window dressing. But Jennifer had the real bombshell. You know those defense contracts Nexttrace is about to renew? The $80 million ones? My friend at the Pentagon says they're all based on performance metrics from the past 3 years. If those metrics were inflated. The picture crystallized. Rick was retrofitting Nexttrace's entire operational history to support inflated valuations. But my backups, my beautiful, paranoid, comprehensive backups, contained the real data. The actual performance metrics. The true system capabilities. I was a liability not because I'd done something wrong, but because I'd done everything right. That night, I opened my personal laptop. Not to hack, not to access anything illegal. Just to review some old documentation I'd written for myself, stored locally. Best practices, system architectures, nothing proprietary, just memories. And there it was, buried in a folder called Ancient History. My personal notes from 2016. The original system architecture. The authentication protocols from before we had real security. The access patterns that everybody had forgotten about. Including, apparently, Rick's new team. You see, when you rebuild a system in a hurry, when you're focused on erasing the present, sometimes you forget to check the past. And Nexttrace's past was full of forgotten doors. Deprecated but never quite deleted. Legacy code commented out but still there. Waiting. I stared at those old notes for hours, not planning anything, not yet, just remembering how simple everything used to be, how trusting, how vulnerable. They'd taken everything from me, my job, my reputation, my future. They'd painted me as a criminal for the sin of being too careful. But they'd forgotten one crucial thing about paranoid people. We always keep backups of our backups. And sometimes, those backups go back further than anyone remembers. The plan formed slowly, like frost creeping across a window. I wasn't going to hack Nexttrace. That would be illegal, traceable, and exactly what they'd expect from a disgruntled former employee. No. I was going to do something far more elegant. I was going to restore their system to exactly what they claimed they wanted. A clean, secure, uncompromised state. Specifically, the state from August 2016. You have to understand something about legacy systems. They're like archaeological layers. Each update, each patch, each security fix builds on what came before. But underneath, buried in the code, the old bones remain. Nexttrace had grown organically, which meant our 2024 infrastructure still contained vestiges of our 2016 foundation, including the old master recovery protocol. Back in 2016, we were cowboys. Security meant a strong password and hoping for the best. We'd built a recovery system that could restore the entire platform from a master backup, useful when you're a startup and your single server crashes. As we grew, we'd layered modern security on top. But nobody had ever fully removed that old recovery system. It was deprecated, undocumented, forgotten. But I remembered. Because paranoid people document everything, even the things they're not supposed to. The recovery trigger was beautiful in its simplicity. A specific sequence of API calls to endpoints that hadn't been used in 7 years. Endpoints that weren't in any current documentation. Endpoints that Rick's new team wouldn't even know existed. I spent 2 weeks preparing. Not coding, that was already done, had been done since 2016. No, I was creating my alibi. Job interviews in Dallas. A weekend trip to visit my sister in Colorado. Paper trails showing Elena Carver was moving on with her life, not dwelling on the past. The key insight came from Jennifer's Pentagon contact. Those $80 million defense contracts were up for renewal in 6 weeks, right around the IPO date. The contracts required comprehensive system audits, performance verification, and most importantly, data integrity checks going back 3 years. 3 years of data that Rick was busily optimizing. But what if, suddenly, their system thought it was 2016 again? I chose a Tuesday night, specifically 3:47 a.m. Austin time, when system loads were lowest and the overnight team was probably playing video games. From a coffee shop in Denver, security cameras would confirm I was there. I opened my laptop and connected through 3 different VPNs. Not to hide, I wasn't doing anything illegal, but to make any investigation murky. The API calls were simple. 5 requests to endpoints that technically still existed but had been forgotten. Legacy system, recovery, init. Legacy system, recovery, authenticate. Legacy system, recovery source. Version HMT16 ZART08. 15. Legacy system, recovery, authorize, token. Legacy system, recovery, execute. The token was the beautiful part. It wasn't some hack or stolen credential. It was the original master recovery token, hard-coded into the system in 2016 when we thought we were clever. Changed in production years ago, but still valid in the recovery subsystem because nobody knew it existed to update it. I watched the server logs, publicly accessible because we'd never fixed that particular information leak. As the system accepted the commands. No alarms, no alerts, just quiet acceptance of valid, authorized requests to a legitimate recovery system. Then I closed my laptop and went to bed. The recovery process would take hours. The 2016 backup would slowly propagate through their systems, like ink spreading through water. Modern data structures trying to reconcile with ancient schemas. User tables reverting to when we had dozens of customers, not millions. Financial records resetting to startup mode. Authentication systems forgetting 7 years of security patches. It wouldn't destroy anything, I'm not a monster. All the current data would be preserved, just misaligned. Imagine trying to run a 2024 company with 2016 infrastructure. Every query would work, just return the wrong results. Every report would generate, just with impossible data. Every system would function, just not together. Most importantly, all those carefully crafted metrics Rick had been manufacturing, they'd be comparing against baselines that no longer existed. You can't show 3 years of growth when your system thinks it's still 2016. I flew back to Austin the next morning, humming to myself. My phone was quiet, but I knew that somewhere in the Nextrace building, people were starting their day, logging into systems that would seem perfectly normal, until they tried to actually use them. The beauty of my plan wasn't in its complexity, it was in its simplicity. I hadn't hacked anything. I'd used a legitimate recovery system with valid authentication to restore from an approved backup. The fact that this would cause chaos? Well, that's what happens when you fire the person who understands why some doors should stay locked. By noon, I imagined someone would notice that customer IDs were off. By evening, they'd realize the financial systems were speaking different languages. By tomorrow morning, when those Pentagon auditors logged in to verify performance metrics, they'd find a company that claimed to have millions of users but whose systems showed 47. 47 users. That's what Nextrace had in August 2016. I sat in my apartment, refreshing tech news sites, waiting for the first signs of the storm. I'd lit a very long fuse, and now all I had to do was wait for the fireworks. They wanted to erase me? Fine. But I'd make sure they remembered why you don't throw away the person who knows where all the bodies are buried. Especially when some of those bodies are still breathing. Wednesday morning broke like any other. But I knew somewhere across town, Nextrace was waking up to a nightmare. The first hint came from a tech forum I monitored, 11:43 a.m. Anyone else having issues with Nexttrace analytics? Our dashboards are showing data from 2016? Then another. Nexttrace API returning user count of 47. That can't be right. We have 50K active integrations. By 2 p.m., their status page went yellow. Investigating reports of data inconsistencies. Corporate speak for, everything is on fire, but we're pretending it's fine. I made myself a sandwich and waited. The real chaos started when the markets closed. Bloomberg picked it up first. Nexttrace Systems experiences major technical anomaly. Weeks before IPO. The article was vague, but the implications were clear. Sources reported significant discrepancies in reported metrics. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Elena, this is Patricia Chen from Nexttrace Legal. We need to speak with you urgently about some system irregularities. Please call back immediately. I deleted it and made dinner. Thursday was when the levee broke. The Pentagon announced they were reassessing the $80 million contract renewal pending a full audit. Turns out, when your system reports you have 47 users but you're billing for supporting millions, people ask questions. The funniest part? Nexttrace couldn't even figure out what was wrong. See, the 2016 system state wasn't broken, it was perfectly functional. Every query worked, every function executed, but the entire data model had reverted to startup mode. Try explaining to an auditor why your enterprise platform is running like a garage project. Marcus texted me that afternoon. The whole engineering floor is in chaos. They brought in consultants who brought in more consultants. Nobody understands the old architecture? Of course they didn't. They'd fired everyone who did. By Friday, the situation had escalated to DEFCON 1. An emergency board meeting was called, trading of Nexttrace stock was halted pending clarification of technical issues. Tech reporters smelled blood in the water. That's when I got the second call. This time from Tom. Elena, I know you can't respond, but please listen. They know it was the recovery system. They're trying to reverse it, but... Christ. Elena, the 2016 backup is propagating through everything. Even the backup systems are backing up to 2016 state. It's like a time virus. I almost felt bad. Almost. Saturday brought the first resignation. The CTO, hired just 6 months ago, announced he was pursuing other opportunities. By Sunday, 2 more VPs had jumped ship. But Monday was the masterpiece. The Wall Street Journal ran a devastating exposé. Turns out, when your systems suddenly revert to startup state, all those carefully hidden skeletons come tumbling out. Emails that were supposed to be deleted, logs that were meant to be purged, financial records showing the real performance metrics, not the polished ones. Someone had leaked internal communications showing Rick ordering the manipulation of performance data. The same Rick who'd fired me for unauthorized data handling. The irony was delicious. But the true poetry came from the Pentagon audit, when their investigators logged in to verify 3 years of performance metrics. The system faithfully reported what it knew. Nexttrace had been operating for exactly 1 month as of August 2016, had 47 users, and was running on infrastructure held together with digital duct tape and prayers. The contracts weren't just suspended, they were terminated with extreme prejudice. Tuesday's emergency board meeting lasted 12 hours. I know because I sat in the coffee shop across from their building, watching executives arrive in the morning with coffee and leave at night looking like they'd aged a decade. Wednesday brought the announcement Rick Dallard was stepping down to focus on personal matters. The same phrase he'd used at DataVault, at Meridian. His golden parachute had turned into a lead balloon. Melissa from HR followed him out the door by Friday. Along with most of the executives who'd orchestrated the staff purge. Turns out, when you fire all your experienced engineers and your system mysteriously breaks, boards get suspicious about your judgment. The best part? They still couldn't fix it. Every attempt to restore current data was met with the 2016 system stubbornly asserting its reality. They'd have to rebuild from scratch. And everyone who knew how to do that was gone. I watched it all unfold from my apartment, a ghost haunting my own revenge. No victory lap, no gloating LinkedIn posts. Just quiet satisfaction as the company that had tried to erase me erased itself instead. 2 weeks after the initial recovery, Nextrace's IPO was officially withdrawn. The company valuation dropped 80%. Investors fled. Clients terminated contracts. The death spiral had begun. And through it all, that beautiful 2016 recovery system kept humming along, faithfully insisting that Nextrace was still a tiny startup with big dreams and 47 users. Exactly as I'd restored it to be. The aftermath was swift and brutal. 3 weeks after the technical anomaly, Nextrace was hemorrhaging talent and money. The board brought in a crisis management firm, forensic IT specialists, and enough lawyers to fill a courthouse. But they were trying to solve the wrong problem. They kept looking for an attack, a breach, malicious code. They couldn't accept that someone had simply used their own system exactly as designed. The investigation was almost comical. The forensic team traced the recovery commands back through 3 VPNs to a Denver coffee shop. Security footage showed a blonde woman who looked nothing like me, amazing what a wig and different clothes can do, using a laptop for 30 minutes. The laptop's MAC address led nowhere. It belonged to a device I'd bought cash at a pawn shop and destroyed the next day. They knew it was me. Of course they knew. But knowing and proving are different things, especially when the attack consisted of legitimate API calls using valid authentication to execute authorized recovery procedures. My lawyer, hired with my last savings, put it beautifully. My client is being accused of using a system she built, with credentials she was given to execute functions she designed. Where exactly is the crime? Meanwhile, Rick's past finally caught up with him. The SEC, already sniffing around Nextrace, discovered his pattern of pre-IPO manipulation. Data Vault, Meridian, and now Nextrace, 3 companies, same playbook, same mysterious technical issues that covered massive fraud. By November, he was facing federal charges. Melissa from HR got her own special karma. Turns out, orchestrating illegal terminations leaves a paper trail. 7 other engineers came forward, all fired in the months before the IPO for manufactured reasons. The class action lawsuit was filed within days of her resignation. I joined it, of course, not for the money, but for the discovery process. Amazing what emails surface when lawyers get involved. The sweetest vindication came from an unexpected source. 3 Pentagon officials reached out through my lawyer. They wanted to understand how Nextrace's metrics had been manipulated. Not the technical details, they had teams for that. They wanted to know about the culture, the pressure, the systematic deception. I spent 6 hours in a federal building, laying out 8 years of observations. How deadlines were impossible until they weren't. How performance metrics magically improved before big contracts. How anyone who asked questions found themselves transitioned out. You documented all this? One official asked, reviewing my personal notes. I document everything, I replied. Occupational hazard of being paranoid. They exchanged glances. We could use someone with your attention to detail, interested in contract work. I almost laughed. The irony of being fired for unauthorized backups, only to be recruited by the Pentagon for my backup habits. But the real climax came in December. Nextrace, desperate to salvage something from the wreckage, hired a new CEO, someone with actual technical background. She called me personally. Elena, I've spent 3 weeks trying to understand what happened. Your code is everywhere in this system. Your comments, your architecture decisions. We need you. I was terminated for cause, I reminded her. Security violation, remember? That was Rick's Nextrace. This is mine. Name your price. I did name a price, not in dollars, though the number I quoted made her pause. My demands were simple: written apology in the company newsletter, full reinstatement of my credentials with backdated seniority, and most importantly, complete autonomy over backup and recovery systems. She agreed to everything except one detail. I can't give you the old title back. How does Chief Architecture Officer sound? It sounded like justice. I returned to Nextrace in January 2025, walking through the same doors I'd been escorted from 9 months earlier. The security guards who'd walked me out couldn't meet my eyes. The few remaining engineers from the old days greeted me like a returning war hero. My first act as CAO was to properly decommission the 2016 recovery system, but not before documenting every line of code, every security hole, every legacy endpoint that Rick's team had missed. Then I built a new system, one with proper safeguards, audit trails, and yes, comprehensive backups. The board approved my budget without question. Funny how nearly losing $80 million in contracts adjusts perspectives on the value of paranoid engineering. Rick's trial started in February. I wasn't called to testify. My actions were deemed unrelated to the fraud charges. But I sat in the gallery for opening statements, making eye contact just once. He looked away first. Melissa's settlement negotiations were less satisfying. HR professionals, it turns out, are very good at covering their tracks. But the discovery process revealed enough embarrassing details that Nextrace settled quickly. The number was sealed. But her LinkedIn shows a 2-year gap in employment. In tech, that's a career death sentence. By March, Nextrace had stabilized. Not thriving, you don't recover from that kind of reputational damage quickly. But surviving? The new CEO kept her word, giving me free rein to rebuild not just the systems, but the culture. We instituted new policies, transparent metrics, protected dissent, and what I called ethical engineering standards. The old Nextrace was dead. What emerged was smaller, humbler, but honest. We'd never be a unicorn, never ring the opening bell at NYSE, but we'd build solid technology for clients who valued integrity over inflation. As for me, I kept my office sparse, just like before. Same coffee mug, same paranoid habits, same Sunday night backup routines. But now, when junior engineers asked why I was so careful, I had a different answer. Because sometimes, I'd tell them, the best revenge isn't destroying what hurt you, it's rebuilding it into something better. Something that can't hurt anyone else the same way. They'd nod, not really understanding, but they'd learn. In tech, everyone learns eventually. The only decoration in my office was a small framed printout, a system log from August 15, 2016, showing 47 registered users. A reminder of how far we'd come, and how quickly we could go back. After all, I still remembered the command sequences, just in case. 6 months later, I submitted my resignation. Not forced out this time, my choice. The new Nextrace was healing, but I couldn't shake the ghosts. Every line of code reminded me of what we'd built and what they'd tried to destroy. Some places are too haunted to call home, even after you've exorcised the demons. The CEO tried to convince me to stay, offered more money, more autonomy, even a shot at her job when she retired. But I'd learned something important. Loyalty to a company is like backing up to deprecated servers. Eventually, someone decides you're a liability. My last day was deliberate. No drama, no surprises. I documented every system, trained my replacement, and left detailed instructions for the next paranoid engineer who'd guard the gates. At 5 p.m. on a Friday in July, I badged out for the last time, but I did leave them one final gift. Hidden in the comments of the backup system, buried where only someone like me would look, was a simple message. Trust, but verify. Document everything, and always keep a backup of your backups. E.C. I drove west out of Austin as the sun set, my ancient Honda packed with everything I owned. No job lined up, no 5-year plan, just a general direction and enough savings to figure it out. The tech world would always need paranoid engineers. But maybe I'd try something different. Teaching, perhaps. Or consulting for companies that valued security over stock prices. Somewhere outside of Las Cruces. I pulled over at a rest stop. The desert stretched endlessly, stars beginning to pierce the darkening sky. I thought about Rick. probably in minimum security by now, learning that orange jumpsuits don't come with stock options. About Melissa, likely explaining employment gaps to skeptical recruiters. About Nexttrace, smaller but cleaner, building honest technology for honest contracts. They'd all paid their prices. But what was mine? Maybe it was this: the knowledge that when pushed, I'd push back, not with violence or vandalism, but with elegant precision. I'd used their own tools against them, turned their greed into their downfall. The backup girl had restored more than just data, she'd restored a kind of balance. But revenge, even the clever kind, leaves residue. You can't code your way out of trauma. Can't debug betrayal. Some corrupted files in your heart never fully recover. I got back in my car and continued west, somewhere in California. I stopped checking tech news in Nevada. I finally deleted my LinkedIn. By the time I reached the Pacific, Elena Carver, the DevOps engineer, was just another ghost in the machine. These days, I live in a small coastal town whose name doesn't matter. I fix computers for locals who pay in cash and homemade pie. I teach basic coding to high school kids who remind me why I love technology before it became about valuations and IPOs. And yes, I still keep backups. Old habits die hard. Sometimes late at night. I check on Nexttrace, still operating, still honest. The stock never recovered to its inflated highs, but the employees seem happy. They post pictures from hackathons and team dinners, the kind we used to have before the suits took over. I never told anyone the full story. My lawyer knew pieces. The Pentagon investigators suspected more. But the whole truth? That stayed with me. Another backup stored offline, encrypted in memory. Until now. Because here's what I learned: every system has a recovery point. Every corrupted file can be restored to an earlier state, but people aren't programs. We don't get clean reinstalls. We carry our bugs forward, patch what we can, and hope the next update doesn't break everything. They fired me for keeping backups. What they didn't understand was that paranoid people don't just back up data. We back up ourselves, our skills, our knowledge, our sense of worth. So when they tried to delete me, I had a restore point ready. The irony is, I saved them in the end. Not the corrupt Nexttrace that tried to lie its way to billions, but the real company underneath. By forcing them back to their roots, I gave them a chance to grow honestly. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's restoration. Do I regret it? Ask me after another sunset. Another quiet day in a place where nobody knows about authentication tokens or system architectures. Where my biggest worry is whether the tide will be high enough for evening surfing. They say the best revenge is living well. But sometimes, the best revenge is forcing others to live honestly. And if that means burning down their house of cards with their own matches, well, that's just good engineering. I still have that coffee mug from Nexttrace. It sits on my desk next to a laptop that's never touched corporate code. A reminder and a warning: back up everything, trust no one, and always keep one command sequence in reserve. You never know when you'll need to restore something to its original state. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious, where are you listening from? Drop a comment below and let me know what city or country you're tuning in from. I'd love to connect with fellow tech workers who understand the reality of corporate life. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever experienced workplace betrayal? How did you handle it? Let's discuss in the comments below.